Mark's heart pounded as he reviewed the footage from the security cameras. There, in the grainy glow of the night vision, was Laura, crouching by the back door. She muttered to herself, her words chillingly clear, "You can't keep me out of my own home." The sight of her fumbling with the lock sent a shiver down his spine. This wasn't just an ex trying to reconcile. It was an obsession that had crossed the line into danger. Moments later, Laura's figure disappeared into the shadows, only to re-emerge near a window. As she tried to pry it open, the sound of sirens shattered the eerie silence. Mark had called the police the moment he saw her on the cameras, and now they arrived just in time. The red and blue lights lit up the yard as officers confronted Laura, her protests echoing into the night. This isn't over, but for Mark and Emily, it was a step toward reclaiming their peace. But before we dive deeper into this gripping story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this tale, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more stories like this one. Mark, a 34-year-old single father, has devoted his life to raising his 8-year-old daughter Emily after losing his wife in a tragic accident. A kind and loving parent, he worked tirelessly to create a stable and happy home for Emily. When he met Laura, a charming and compassionate woman, it felt like fate had granted him a second chance at love. Over 2 years, Laura grew close to Emily, baking cookies together, reading bedtime stories, and making the little girl smile again. Mark was convinced he had found the perfect partner, someone who could fill the void in their lives. Recently engaged, Mark and Laura moved in together to cut costs while planning their wedding. At first, things seemed perfect, until Laura's behavior began to change. She started hiding her phone, staying out late, and pulling away emotionally from both Mark and Emily. Emily, noticing the shift, asked innocently, "Why does Laura always look at her phone now? She used to bake cookies with me." The comment struck Mark deeply, stirring unease he couldn't ignore. As Laura grew more distant, Mark began questioning the foundation of their relationship. Was this simply pre-wedding stress, or was there something far more troubling hidden behind Laura's sudden secrecy? Mark's growing unease finally reached a breaking point one quiet evening. Laura had been acting suspiciously for weeks, guarding her phone like a secret vault, stepping outside for hushed calls, and becoming increasingly evasive when asked about her day. While she slept, Mark wrestled with his doubts until curiosity got the better of him. Carefully, he unlocked her phone and scrolled through her messages. What he found shattered his world. Explicit messages between Laura and a man named Chris, someone from her gym, confirmed Mark's worst fears. The exchange was filled with flirtation, intimate plans, and declarations that left no room for misinterpretation. His heart pounded as he read further, each word driving a deeper wedge into the life he thought they were building. Laura, the woman he had trusted to be a partner and a maternal figure to Emily, was having an affair. The betrayal cut to Mark's core. Not just because of Laura's infidelity, but because of what it meant for Emily. Laura had been Emily's beacon of hope, someone who brought warmth and stability back into their lives after the tragedy of losing her mother. How could she do this, knowing the devastation it would cause? When Mark confronted Laura the next morning, she didn't deny the affair. Instead, she sat stone-faced as he recounted what he'd found, her lack of remorse cutting him like a blade. When he demanded an explanation, her response was as shocking as her betrayal. "This was a test, Mark," she said, her tone calm, almost condescending. "I needed to know if you truly loved me. If you did, you wouldn't react like this. You'd try to understand why I did it." Mark stared at her, stunned into silence. A test? Her reasoning was not only absurd but insulting. He felt a surge of anger, disbelief, battling with heartbreak. "You think cheating is a test of loyalty?" he finally said, his voice rising. "Do you even hear yourself? How could you think this is okay, especially with Emily involved?" Laura rolled her eyes as if he were being unreasonable. "You don't get it, do you? I've been feeling neglected. You're always busy with work and Emily. I needed to know that I still mattered to you. Chris was just a way to figure that out." Mark's anger boiled over. "You needed to cheat to figure out if I loved you? I've done nothing but show you how much you matter. I trusted you with my daughter, with our future, and this is how you repay me?" Rather than apologizing, Laura doubled down. "You're overreacting," she said dismissively. "If you really loved me, you'd see that this was about us, about fixing things." Mark's hands shook with rage as he took a step back, realizing he was arguing with someone who couldn't or wouldn't see the depth of her betrayal. "Fixing things," he said, his voice shaking. "You didn't fix anything, Laura. You destroyed the trust we had. You broke our family." Her expression shifted briefly, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face, but it was gone in an instant. "Maybe we both made mistakes," she said, deflecting blame. "But if you can't forgive me, maybe this relationship wasn't as strong as I thought." Mark couldn't believe what he was hearing. Her audacity, her unwillingness to take responsibility, it left him both furious and heartbroken. For 2 years, he had built a life with this woman, letting her into his heart and Emily's life. And now, in the face of undeniable betrayal, she was twisting it all back on him. Taking a deep breath, Mark made a decision. "You need to leave," he said firmly. "Pack your things and go. I can't do this anymore, and I won't let Emily grow up thinking this kind of behavior is acceptable." Laura's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. Perhaps she knew she'd pushed him too far, or perhaps she thought he would change his mind. Either way, she began to gather her belongings, leaving Mark to pick up the pieces of the life they had shared. As the door closed behind her, Mark felt a wave of grief and relief wash over him. He had lost the woman he thought he loved, but he knew he had done the right thing. Looking down the hall to Emily's room, he promised himself one thing. No matter how much it hurt, he would protect his daughter from the fallout of Laura's betrayal. They would heal together. Mark knew there was no going back. The trust was broken beyond repair, and keeping Laura in their lives would only deepen the wound. With a heavy heart, he told her to leave their home immediately. "You need to pack your things and go," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Laura hesitated, her expression flickering between defiance and guilt, but she didn't argue. Perhaps she realized there was nothing she could say to undo what she had done. As Laura left, the weight of her betrayal lingered in the silence of the house. Emily, unaware of the details but sensing the tension, approached Mark with wide, tearful eyes. "Daddy, why is Laura leaving? Did I do something wrong?" Her innocent question pierced through Mark's heart like a dagger. How could he explain this to a child so full of love and trust? He knelt down to her level, his hands gently resting on her shoulders. "No, sweetheart," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault. Laura made some choices that hurt both of us, and now she can't stay here anymore. But I promise you, it's going to be okay. We're a team, and we'll get through this together." Emily nodded slowly, wiping her tears, though her confusion was still evident. Mark hugged her tightly, silently vowing to protect her from the storm Laura's actions had unleashed. Even after leaving, Laura refused to let go. In the days that followed, she began bombarding Mark with messages. Her tone shifted wildly, from tearful apologies to angry accusations and even veiled threats. One moment she would beg for another chance, claiming, "I didn't mean to hurt you, I love you, Mark." The next, she would lash out, writing, "You're throwing away everything we built because of one mistake. You're the real problem here." Mark ignored her attempts to engage him, refusing to be drawn into her manipulative games. But what infuriated him most was when Laura began involving Emily. She started sending gifts to the house addressed to Emily, stuffed animals, toys, and even handwritten notes that said things like, "I miss you so much, sweetheart. Remember, I'll always love you." Emily, confused by the mixed signals, would ask Mark why Laura was still trying to reach her. "Doesn't she know she hurt us?" she asked one evening, clutching a teddy bear Laura had sent. Mark, suppressing his anger, explained gently, "Sometimes people don't understand how their actions affect others, but it's important to focus on what makes us happy and safe. That's what matters most." As the messages and gifts continued, Mark decided to set clear boundaries. He blocked Laura's number from his phone and Emily's tablet, ensuring she could no longer send messages directly. He also began documenting everything, every message, every attempt Laura made to contact Emily, preparing for the possibility of legal action if Laura's behavior escalated further. Through it all, Mark remained steadfast in his determination to shield Emily from the chaos. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but his focus was unwavering. His priority was clear: to rebuild a life of stability and trust for Emily, free from the shadows of Laura's betrayal. Despite being asked to leave and cut off from direct contact, Laura's behavior took a disturbing turn. Unable to accept the end of the relationship, she began to escalate her efforts to insert herself back into Mark and Emily's lives. It started with unannounced visits to Mark's workplace. She would linger outside the building, pacing and texting him repeatedly. When Mark refused to respond, Laura marched into the office one day, causing a scene in front of his colleagues. "You can't just throw me away like this," she shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet reception area. Embarrassed and frustrated, Mark calmly asked security to escort her out. The harassment didn't stop there. Laura began appearing at Emily's school events, uninvited. At a school assembly, she approached Emily during intermission, kneeling to speak with her and handing her a small gift. Mark, noticing the interaction, rushed over and firmly told Laura to leave. Laura, however, made a dramatic display, yelling, "I'm not here for you, Mark. I'm here for her. She's my family too." Parents and teachers turned to watch the commotion, leaving Mark mortified and angry. Her behavior grew increasingly erratic. Laura would park her car near their home and sit for hours, as if waiting for a moment to confront Mark or Emily. On one occasion, she even tried to follow them to the grocery store, only to abandon her pursuit when Mark called the police. The repeated invasions of privacy and her refusal to respect boundaries made it clear to Mark that her actions were no longer just manipulative, they were threatening. Realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, Mark decided it was time to take definitive action. He reached out to his friend, a lawyer, and explained everything that had been happening. Together, they began compiling a detailed account of Laura's harassment. Mark provided screenshots of her messages, including her alternating apologies, threats, and emotional manipulation. He documented the gifts she sent to Emily, the incidents at his workplace and Emily's school, and even the times she showed up near their home. His lawyer advised him to keep meticulous records and continue reporting every encounter to the authorities. With a growing body of evidence, they filed for a restraining order. The filing included detailed descriptions of her stalking behavior, public outbursts, and attempts to involve Emily inappropriately. Mark felt a mixture of relief and sadness as he signed the paperwork. It wasn't easy to take such a formal step against someone he once loved, but he knew it was necessary to protect himself and his daughter. When the restraining order was granted, Mark finally felt a sense of control returning to his life. Laura was legally prohibited from contacting him or Emily, and from coming within a certain distance of their home, workplace, or Emily's school. Mark also installed security cameras around the house as an additional precaution, ensuring they would have concrete evidence if Laura tried to violate the order. Though the ordeal had taken a toll on Mark and Emily, the restraining order marked a turning point. It wasn't just about keeping Laura away, it was about reclaiming their peace and safety. For the first time in weeks, Mark felt they could begin to heal without the constant shadow of Laura's presence. With each step forward, he reminded himself of his promise to protect Emily and rebuild their lives, stronger and more resilient than before. Just when Mark thought he had seen the worst of Laura's manipulative tactics, she unleashed another shocking move. She claimed she was pregnant with his child. Her message came late one evening, dripping with desperation. "Mark, I know things are hard right now, but you need to know, I'm pregnant. This changes everything. We need to talk." Mark stared at the screen, his heart racing. The timing seemed suspicious, and her sudden declaration reeked of manipulation. Still, the claim was too serious to ignore. He met with Laura the next day, where she tearfully insisted the pregnancy was real. "You can't just walk away now," she pleaded. "Think of the baby. We need to fix this for our family." Mark demanded proof. He requested medical records, an ultrasound, anything to substantiate her claim. Laura hesitated, stumbling over her excuses. "The doctor hasn't given me anything official yet," she said. Suspicious, Mark contacted a private investigator to dig deeper. Within days, the investigator uncovered the truth. Laura's pregnancy was a complete fabrication. She had downloaded staged sonogram images from the internet, editing them to include her name. Armed with this evidence, Mark confronted her. Laura initially denied it, but when presented with the proof, she broke down. "I didn't know what else to do," she cried. "I thought this would make you see how much you mean to me." Mark's anger simmered beneath the surface. "You've crossed every possible line, Laura," he said, his voice steady but firm. "This isn't love, it's manipulation, and it ends now." As Mark tried to process Laura's fake pregnancy, another disturbing truth emerged. Reviewing his credit card statements, he noticed several suspicious charges across hundreds of items and expensive meals he hadn't authorized. Digging deeper, he discovered that Laura had been using his card without his knowledge during their relationship. The purchases aligned suspiciously with her time spent with Chris, her gym lover. Mark forwarded the financial records to his investigator, who traced the transactions back to Laura. The evidence was damning. She had been funding her secret affair with his money. Luxury gifts, high-end dinners, and even a weekend getaway had been charged to Mark's account. Mark felt a mixture of anger and betrayal. She hadn't just broken his trust, she had stolen from him. He confronted Laura, who initially tried to downplay the charges. "It wasn't what you think," she said, feigning innocence. But when Mark laid out the evidence, her excuses crumbled. "You didn't just betray me emotionally, you used me," Mark said coldly. "You took advantage of my trust and used my money to fund your affair. That's theft, Laura, and I'm done letting you take anything more from me." Desperate and cornered, Laura stooped to a new low. She tried to manipulate Emily. One day after school, Emily hesitantly approached Mark, holding a folded note Laura had slipped her. "She said it was important," Emily murmured. Mark opened the note and felt his stomach churn. Laura had written, "Your dad doesn't love me anymore because I wanted to give you a sibling. He doesn't understand what's best for us, but I do. Remember, I'll always be here for you." The words enraged Mark. Laura's attempt to use his daughter to drive a wedge between them was unforgivable. Mark sat down with Emily, who looked confused and a little scared. "Emily," he began gently, "what Laura wrote isn't true. She's trying to make you feel bad about something that isn't your fault." Emily's lip quivered. "Why would she say that?" she asked. "Doesn't she know we're a team?" Mark hugged her tightly. "She's hurt, and sometimes when people are hurt, they make bad decisions. But you and I, we're stronger than this. We know the truth, and that's what matters." Later that evening, Mark confronted Laura directly. He called her, furious but controlled. "You've crossed a line," he said. "You don't get to involve Emily in your manipulations. She's a child, and I won't let you hurt her with your lies." Laura tried to defend herself, claiming, "I just wanted her to know I still care about her." But Mark wasn't having it. "You're only thinking about yourself," he snapped. "Emily doesn't need this. She needs peace and stability, something you clearly can't provide." The combined weight of Laura's manipulations, the fake pregnancy, financial theft, and targeting of Emily, only solidified Mark's resolve to protect his family. He doubled down on his legal actions, updating his restraining order to include stricter conditions. The investigator's findings provided additional evidence, strengthening his case should Laura attempt further interference. Though the pain of her betrayal lingered, Mark found solace in one thing: his unwavering bond with Emily. Despite Laura's efforts to fracture their relationship, they emerged stronger. Mark vowed to shield Emily from any future harm, knowing that their resilience would carry them forward. Together, they began to rebuild, leaving Laura and her toxic games firmly in the past. As Mark worked with his investigator to untangle the mess Laura had left behind, an even darker truth surfaced about Chris, the man Laura had been seeing. Initially dismissed as just another participant in her betrayal, Chris turned out to be far more dangerous than Mark had anticipated. Through a series of background checks and discreet inquiries, the investigator uncovered that Chris was a seasoned con artist with a history of exploiting vulnerable women for financial gain. Chris's pattern was clear. He would charm women into trusting him, encourage them to share their financial resources, and then disappear once he had drained their accounts. Alarmingly, the investigator found evidence that Chris had already begun this process with Laura. Bank statements showed large withdrawals from Laura's accounts, suspiciously close to the timeline of their affair. It became evident that Chris's interest in Laura wasn't about love, it was about money. Determined to protect himself and Emily from further involvement in this chaos, Mark decided to expose Chris publicly. Armed with the investigator's findings, including financial records and testimonials from Chris's previous victims, Mark organized a meeting with Laura. He presented the evidence to her, laying everything out in stark detail. At first, Laura was defensive. "Chris isn't like that," she insisted, her voice shaking. "He cares about me." But as Mark calmly showed her the overwhelming proof, her confidence began to crumble. Transaction receipts, aliases Chris had used in the past, and even testimonies from other women painted a clear picture of his deceit. "You think you found someone who loves you," Mark said evenly, "but he's just using you, and when he's done, he'll leave you with nothing." The revelation left Laura stunned, her bravado replaced by a mix of fear and humiliation. Chris's betrayal was the final blow to her already fragile facade, forcing her to confront the consequences of her choices. But for Mark, it was a moment of vindication, a way to take control of the narrative and ensure the truth couldn't be twisted any further. Though exposed and disgraced, Laura refused to let go completely. Her behavior grew increasingly erratic, and Mark began to notice unsettling signs around his property. The locks on the front door appeared tampered with, and neighbors mentioned seeing Laura's car parked nearby late at night. Concerned for his and Emily's safety, Mark took proactive measures. He installed security cameras around the house, ensuring any unusual activity would be recorded. His precautions paid off. One night, the cameras captured chilling footage. Laura creeping around the property, her face partially obscured by a hoodie. She rattled the doorknob and tried to force the window open, muttering to herself, "You can't keep me out of my own home." The words sent shivers down Mark's spine as he reviewed the footage. Her delusional persistence had reached a dangerous level. Mark immediately contacted the police, providing them with the security footage as evidence. Officers arrived within minutes, catching Laura still lurking near the backyard. When confronted, she launched into a tirade, accusing Mark of stealing her life and blaming him for everything that had gone wrong. Her erratic behavior only reinforced the seriousness of the situation. The police escorted Laura away, warning her that any further attempts to contact Mark or Emily would result in severe legal consequences. For Mark, the incident was both terrifying and liberating. Laura's actions had proven beyond doubt that she posed a threat, not just emotionally but physically as well. With the police now fully involved and the restraining order tightened, Mark finally felt a sense of security returning to his home. Laura's attempts to disrupt their lives had escalated to a dangerous level, but his vigilance and determination to protect Emily had paid off. As he tucked Emily into bed that night, Mark reflected on the chaos they had endured. "Are we safe now, Dad?" Emily asked, her voice small but steady. Mark smiled gently, brushing her hair back. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe now, and I promise, I won't let anything hurt us again." While the scars of Laura's betrayal and harassment would take time to heal, Mark knew they had emerged stronger. The experience had tested his resolve and his commitment to protecting his daughter, but it had also reminded him of the resilience they shared. Together, they had faced the storm, and together they would build a brighter future. The culmination of Laura's relentless harassment, deceit, and manipulation brought her to a courtroom where the full extent of her actions was laid bare. Mark, armed with substantial evidence from his investigator and security footage, presented a compelling case against her. The charges included fraud for her misuse of his credit card, stalking, and multiple violations of the restraining order. The judge, recognizing the severity of Laura's behavior, handed down a firm ruling. Laura was sentenced to probation, mandatory therapy, and ordered to pay restitution for the financial harm she caused. The court also enforced a permanent no-contact order, barring her from contacting Mark or Emily in any capacity. The ruling was a significant victory for Mark, granting him and his daughter the legal protection and peace of mind they desperately needed. Laura's attempts to manipulate and control had failed, and the court's decision ensured she could no longer disrupt their lives. Though the legal process was emotionally draining, Mark felt a sense of justice being served, knowing he had done everything in his power to protect his family. With the legal battle behind them, Mark shifted his focus to healing. His priority was rebuilding trust and stability for Emily, who had endured more than any child should. He sat her down one evening and spoke from the heart. "We've been through a lot, Emily," he said, holding her small hands in his. "But I promise you, we're stronger now. We're better off without people who hurt us." Emily nodded, her resilience shining through her young eyes. She had started therapy to process her feelings about Laura's betrayal and the upheaval in their lives. Through her sessions, she found healthy ways to express her emotions and gain clarity about the situation. Her therapist noted how remarkably strong and mature she was, a testament to the loving environment Mark had worked so hard to create. Mark, too, began to prioritize his own well-being. He leaned on his therapist and support network to process the anger and sadness that lingered from Laura's betrayal. Slowly but surely, he started to feel like himself again, regaining confidence in his ability to navigate life as both a father and an individual. In the aftermath, mutual friends who had initially sided with Laura reached out to Mark to apologize. Many admitted they had been misled by her lies and regretted not supporting him earlier. Though Mark appreciated their apologies, he approached these relationships with caution. Trust, he had learned, could be fragile, and he was no longer willing to invest in connections that lacked authenticity or loyalty. Instead, he focused on strengthening bonds with the friends who had stood by him from the beginning. Their unwavering support had been a lifeline during his darkest moments, and Mark made it a point to express his gratitude. These true friends became a cornerstone of his and Emily's support system, offering encouragement and reassurance as they rebuilt their lives. The chapter with Laura was finally closed, and though the scars of her actions remained, Mark and Emily were on the path to healing. They had weathered betrayal, manipulation, and harassment, emerging stronger and more resilient. For the first time in months, their home felt peaceful, a sanctuary where they could laugh, grow, and move forward without fear. Mark knew the journey wasn't over, but he felt hopeful. Together, he and Emily had overcome every obstacle, proving that their bond was unbreakable. The future was theirs to reclaim, and Mark was determined to make it a bright and joyful one. In the quiet after the storm, Mark found himself reflecting on the journey he and Emily had endured. Laura's betrayal and manipulation had left deep wounds, but they also revealed undeniable truths. Sitting with a cup of coffee one morning, Mark thought about her claim that her actions had been a test. He shook his head at the memory, realizing the truth. It wasn't about love, it was about control. "I'll never settle for less than honesty and respect again." Emily, ever wise beyond her years, seemed to sense the shift in their lives. One evening, as they sat on the couch, she leaned her head against his shoulder and said, "I'm glad it's just you and me again, Dad. We're a good team." Her words, simple yet profound, filled him with pride and hope. Together, they had faced challenges no one should have to, and yet they had come out stronger. As they rebuilt their lives, Mark found an unexpected bright spot in Sarah, a kind-hearted woman he met through a mutual friend. She shared his values of honesty and compassion, and her genuine connection with Emily warmed his heart. Slowly, they began forming a bond that felt natural and unforced, a sign that brighter days were ahead. The story ended one sunny afternoon at the park. Mark, Emily, and Sarah sat together on a blanket, laughing as Emily chased a kite in the breeze. In that moment, Mark realized how far they had come. The hardest lessons in life often come from betrayal, he thought, but they also show us our true strength. Finally, he allowed himself to embrace the peace and joy of a fresh start. The story conveys a profound message about resilience, strength, and the value of true love within a family. Through the journey of Mark and his daughter Emily, we see that betrayal not only causes pain, but also teaches us how to overcome adversity and emerge stronger. Mark demonstrates that love for family must be built on a foundation of trust, honesty, and respect. When faced with Laura's deceit and toxic behavior, Mark not only protects himself, but also prioritizes Emily's safety and happiness. He bravely cuts ties with the harmful relationship while focusing on healing and rebuilding their lives. The story's message is clear. Don't be afraid to let go of what harms you, as it paves the way for healing and new happiness. Ultimately, through resilience and love, Mark and Emily overcome every hardship to reclaim their peace and hope. The story affirms that true strength lies in determination and the ability to believe in brighter beginnings.